Okay, thank you for tuning into Stampscaping 101. That was the spooky branch being stamped onto some black cardstock as my little interior spread design element. And that's to complement the front of the card, which is the spooky branch used 2 times. Over the top of kind of what this scene and video is all about, which is, kind of the background and just the sheer amount of, the glowing effects, you might say, that's happening in here. My last few videos, I've kind of been experimenting and keeping the color applications minimal on them, just kind of playing around with some different techniques. And I don't know, maybe subconsciously I'm trying to make up for it in this one scene here. I didn't use a lot of different colors of ink, but I don't know, I probably went through that entire stack, but I really focused in on kind of the red and the magenta, black a lot. But I put down a ton of ink on here. I've probably used as much ink on this card as I have on any cards that I've done in the past. So, just layering it down a lot, and the card became so saturated many times that I had to kind of let it set up a little bit before returning it to apply more inks, because the more buildup you get on a glossy cardstock like that, sometimes you'll try to apply more ink and it's so moist that you start wiping it off, so you have to kind of let it set up, dry a little bit before you can apply more. Then you can come back to it and apply more and more. Now you can try doing things like heat setting, but I usually don't do that. But see, I like that rich color glow that's achieved by multiple layers of transparent inks, which is the dye-based inks. Alcohol inks are transparent as well, but you really can't layer them like that without getting real textural, because if you layer things like alcohol inks on top of one another, it causes the ink underneath to go back into solution, and they become wet again, and they move around. Dye-based inks do that a little bit, but they kind of absorb into your paper a little bit more. So you can apply multiple layers like that to achieve kind of these color glows like, that are in this scene. There's so much variation that can happen when you're applying inks to this degree that you always get kind of different looks, even if you try the same inks again, layering them on this like that to get that kind of varied background. You just never really know what's going to come up. You'll use more, like in this one, maybe more purple or more brown or something like this, because there's probably 12 layers of ink that are running in here. So just to what degree you use of one or less, or will result in sometimes a different look. So and that's a fun thing about it. You get these varied looks. Anyways, it's a really simple composition. This is just the spooky branch. Used once, then I used it again twice, like that, to kind of create a larger branch. You have to keep the imagery kind of more solid and silhouette based. I intended it for, to look like that, which I think looks okay, but then I was kind of turning it around and I thought, that looks kind of interesting as well, so I kind of focused more of the composition, or I don't know, I didn't focus on it, but I just altered it to be a portrait configured card, vertical, and I just have the branches hanging down. I thought they looked natural like that. And if you can see on here, there's some highlights with the bleed-proof white applied with the just a kind of a small paintbrush. And I can go for some very thin lines on there, just some little highlights to kind of make the branch seem a little bit more three-dimensional. I think it looked okay without those highlights, but I like it even better with the highlights, and kind of a brush application of that paint looks pretty good, I think, and that's one of the things that I've been kind of experimenting with in the last couple videos and scenes that I've done. Anyways, I always liked, I usually focus on just doing scenes like that, but I do really like sequential aesthetics, so I should play around with more of the card aspect of doing scenes. You know, most of us make cards with our scenes. You know, if you're a rubber stamper, some people just stamp, you know, scenic stampers just stamp scenes, and they don't really, you know, it's not really, they don't do any card making, but a lot of us do. So I do like sequential aesthetics, so kind of doing a repetition of imagery like that and bringing that imagery in this case it's done in a reverse, you know, light on dark. I love black papers like that and doing that. And this would be fun to kind of, you know, write whatever you're going to write on a card. You can do it over here too, you know, but do it in a metallic or white gel pen or something like that would look good on here. You can stamp out a quote or something like that in light. Or you can just do another whole scene in here and, you know, put it in here. Maybe you can do it in a complementary color too, like red and purple. Like greens would look kind of interesting in there. You know, someone opens up a card, boom, they get a bonus scene or something like that. But I love sequential aesthetics and things like bookmaking and things like that. I took a class on that one time in college, doing sequential aesthetics, and you know, the repetition of form is certainly one of those things. Form and shape you can do on here. I can even, if I wanted to, I can take and do some of those little highlights, white highlights on here. Even though this is white, I can, you know, put a little highlight in that, and that would bring even more continuity to, you know, the interior and the front of this card. So that might be fun. I'm not going to do it on this video right here, but something to kind of play around with. Anyways, if you choose to watch this video, sorry for it being so choppy, but I did have to stop several times and wait for the inks to set up and kind of dry before I can apply another layer. And then, I don't know, it just kept going on and on and on. I kept wanting to add more and more and more ink, so I have a lot of little breaks in there. So if my videos are choppy already, this one's kind of extra choppy, you know, for those extra layers of ink that were applied. And like I said, I don't know, I think subconsciously I just wanted to, I don't know, get a super, super saturated card going after the last couple cards and experiments that I did. I probably had some sort of, I don't know, dye-based ink on glossy paper technique withdrawals, I'm guessing, or something like that, because this one used a lot of ink. So anyways, thanks again for tuning in, and if you watch this video, I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, as always, just leave a note in the comment section. And I don't know. Thanks once again. Okay, I think I'm going to do a little kind of fun with color experiment here. I don't know if it's so much an experiment, but I just want to go for kind of a different background in terms of a shape of the background than I've done before. I did this, or I do these kind of aurora borealis, northern light types of backgrounds sometimes, and I was looking at some photographs recently, and it's really amazing the variation that can happen with these kind of sky figures. And I thought I would just go a little bit more free form than so much replication, or an attempt at replication at least, of some forms that I've seen, okay? So I'm getting a little bit of this peach Bellini re-inker fluid. You can use any type of light value re-inker fluid that you might have for any of your dye-based inks. If you're going to kind of do this type of real free-form background, I think the reinker fluids make it really easy to kind of get a really good foundation swatch of color, and it also kind of lubricates the paper for the other inks to come. Okay, now for a color scheme, I thought I'd go with something kind of purplish, and let me see if I have a really dark purple as well. I didn't think I had it, but yeah, I need to get some more inks, but I'm going for a certain range of tones here, okay? Now I'm going to be using a lot of Marby inks, but you can use whatever colors you want, alright? Typically go for some sort of value range, starting with lighter tones, some medium tones, and some darker tones. Now, I'm just going to use this brown here. I think it transitions into that just fine. If I didn't have things like this pale violet right here, and it doesn't have to be this brand either, I can always go for something like a pink and a light blue, because these two colors would mix, not physically mix, but in terms of layering the two together, you would get a version of violet, okay, from the mix of the two. So, you know, so my transitions of colors could look like something like this. This looks out of place, but these two colors combined together will form something probably a little bit lighter than this value right here, okay? So if you know just a little bit about, you know, the rudimentary aspects of color combinations, you can mix and layer, you know, certain tones together. Now, I'm going to kind of throw a little bit of a warm tone into this mix here. Now, if I had something like a light pink re-inker that just happened to be on my desk right now, I'd probably use that one, but I didn't, so I looked up and I saw that Peach Bellini, which is a very light tone. Here's the pad that it used to come in. These inkers have been discontinued, but you can get like a distress ink or something like that would be fine too, like an antique linen. Alright, so let's just get into it here. I kind of have to give that little explanation for, you know, because everyone has a lot of different inks out there, okay, in your, I don't know, your supplies. Alright, so let's see what, I thought I'd go for something like a real bendy type of arc in the sky, and to do that, let's go down something like this. Alright, now this is going to be one of the lighter tones that I'll be using, okay? It doesn't look that light in value here, but it will be when all's said and done. It's not going to make this color lighter, but just the very nature of using a darker color than this color right here is going to seem lighter by contrast, okay? So anyways, getting a good slathering of ink on this paper. This is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 glossy cardstock. I want that to stretch up there a little bit more, but let's see if we can get that. Okay, see how I'm kind of coming in from the outside edge in like that? From this side. And this is the motion here, okay? I'm not going like this, and just, I'm kind of going more this type of pendulum motion. So it leaves it more this type of streak here, okay? See that? That's the nature of what I'm doing right here. It's not doing this, okay? See how it has that harsh finish there? I want it more tapered like this. So this is how it looks like on its side. See this arcing motion like that? Okay, so it's not this and up. That's why I'm not getting that type of thing on here, okay? Alright, and I keep doing that. I know I have some pretty good coverage right here, but I still, you know, kind of keep bringing it in like so. And I use the drier version of this as well. See, this is still coming off. There's still ink on here, believe it or not. But that's how I kind of spread it around, and I try to make it, yeah, you know, reasonably smooth looking. Okay, now we'll go to this rosemary. I need a new rosemary pad. This one's looking a little bit whipped. But we are going to change the hue a little bit here. There's not so much of the yellow in this pink. And when I say yellow in the pink, that's kind of what, you know, peach Bellini is, right? It's kind of like yellow and pink put together, giving you that peach hue. Alright, now I'm just using the same stylus tool. Just taking in some more of that pink. Okay, and that's good with that one. Let's go to a pale violet. You don't want to jump up into anything too dark too soon, okay? So this is just kind of taking it nice and incrementally. These are really fun to do, these backgrounds. It makes for a fairly dramatic scene by doing this type of thing. A lot of the mood of a scene is really about, it's not so much the imagery, it's about the lighting and colors. Not that you can't have a monochromatic black and white, that's going to be dramatic as well, but in terms of a lot of emotional content that you can depict in a scene, it really comes about from the colors that you utilize in it, in the background, okay, the lighting of a scene. So this type of look, just as you can imagine, you know, I mean, it's a busy looking background so far, right? It should have, you know, play a kind of an integral role in the impact the scene might have. Okay, this is kind of a magenta. The previous one was I believe it was plum. Nope, that one was wine. But it doesn't have to be those colors. It just transitioned fairly well to my eye. And when we're doing this type of layering, you know, if you just kind of generally keep it within kind of the family of colors, it'll blend on here just fine, you know, and integrate with the previous tone. Now if I use like a green on here, I don't think it's going to mix with that too much, you know, and overlap. I don't know, it might be an interesting look, but I don't know how graceful it'll look. Not that everything has to be, but, you know, in terms of what I'm going after right here, you know, it's, all the colors are somewhat in harmony with each other inherently, so that when you layer them onto your page like this, they'll combine just fine. Okay, moving on up to a dark brown. Ooh, my dark brown looks a little bit dry. Or it could just be that that magenta that I just used was really wet. You can see this when I get some ink down like that. See how dark it is? But the page is so saturated now, the surface with ink, it's really kind of not transferring to the paper very easy. And that's where Marvies come in handy for me. Other inks are a little bit thicker, so that might have started happening with some earlier tones that were used. Okay. And when you're doing this type of thing, at least for me, there's so much variation that can happen. I mean, if I tried to get this exact look again, I don't think I could. Even using the same tool, the same paper, the same inks, exact same color inks, you know, because it'll be a little bit different. Just because of the variation that's happening here. I don't, I have a basic idea in mind of what I might want this to look like, but, the fun is in the, kind of in discovery, and I don't know if the word is random nature of it, but there is a certain element of, chance that comes into play. Not in terms of getting some kind of dramatic background, but just exactly how that background looks, You never really know until you get into it. You'll use a certain color more than another one. An application of it here and there is a little bit different, so there's a lot of variation. Okay, let's try to go to black now, okay? And hopefully it transfers well, because I want this to get fairly dark, but only in the areas in which I'm applying it. Okay, the darker I make certain parts of this background, the lighter areas are going to seem by contrast. And that's what I want. I want some variation in here. I want my light areas to really stand out. Now I am going over a lot of that color with black, but it's not going to read as just a straight black. I think it's a much more rich, tone in there. So it almost looks like a flame in the background, huh? Okay, let's go a little bit darker. See, I'm getting some ink out. Sometimes I do that, and then I kind of pull the puddle of ink across like that, like this, okay? And then I just, see how easy it is to spread that out? Now that being said, that can be a good thing if you're kind of someone that wants to be in command of how much ink is applied. It works fine for you, but it's mostly for people that are beginning, this type of process. What happens is sometimes that ink just sits on that surface of the page and they spread it across thinking that it's going to be a fairly light value swipe, because when they started doing it with the lightest tone, if they went like that, it was very light because you're starting off with a very light value. But if you do this with black, you're going to get a swipe of, very dark black in this area in here. Alright? That being said, it's easy to control. Just do that. If you start streaking in, just don't come in as far as you did, okay? Stay out here. Maybe in terms of kind of the motion of this, what I'm doing is I'm making, instead of doing like that type of swipe, you can do this type of swipe, okay? It's much shorter, right? And you can stay in the lighter areas, and that way you can retain the lighter areas of your card. So shorten up a little bit. you know, those swipes make them a little bit more condensed because you're being a little bit more perimeter oriented. I'm coming in here quite a ways, but for the most part, like right around here, I want that transition of light, medium to dark. So if you want that darkness to be out there and not in here, don't take it in there. It's, you know, it's just getting used to it, okay? So this kind of touch is easy to do, but when people are first learning it, oftentimes with the darker tones, they're just going a little bit too far, okay? And with the lightest of tones, sometimes you're re-inking because it gets dry very quickly, but when the page gets wet like this, that ink doesn't transfer off your sponge applicator as fast, so there's a lot of ink in here, and you can still do, you know, a fairly dark mark with it. So just stay on the outside a little bit more, make your swipes a little bit more condensed and controlled, and you'll be fine. And it's easy to do. Just make a shorter stroke, like this, okay? Okay. That's kind of interesting. It's like a... It really does look a little bit kind of like a flame to me. Maybe I ought to just go with it and add in some more, like maybe a crimson red into this color scheme, and it might be nice. Oh, let's see. Here's plum. Is that the color that I used before? Oh no, it's wine. Let's take a look at this. This is cherry red. I don't use a lot of my darker tones a lot of times because the darker tones a lot of times are on the outside edge, so I just use very little of it, and it spreads around so much because the page is wet, so I don't know. Let's test this out. See how it looks. Maybe I'll use it on this side, see if I like it, because I kind of like that pink in there, but I don't know. Let's see what it looks like here. Looks like blood. So I used it right there. Let's pull in a little bit more. It's putting a pretty intense swatch of color down, which I guess is okay, or in terms of it looking okay. Is it more rich? Is it richer to the eye? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, it's pretty intense though, isn't it, right there? I think I might have to let this sit for a little bit. I really like it, so I want more of that color to transfer and be applied to this scene, because I think that's what I'm going after right there. But I want black on top of that too. So I might let it set for a bit, which is a bummer, because I like just continuing on with something when I like what's going on. But sometimes you have to be patient and just let the card do what it wants to do. And it seems to want to dry a little bit right now. Okay. Okay, that's pretty intense. And do I intend this to be like a Aurora Borealis, Northern Light type of thing? Not really. Because those colors probably it wouldn't look like that, but it's, I should say this look is inspired by the notion of an Aurora Borealis more than, say, a depiction of it. I think I said that at the beginning, but just to reiterate. Okay, I was going to let this set up, but I thought I'd get a little black in here before I paused. Like I said, when you like what you see, it's not, you know, you just kind of want to keep building it. Oh, that's fun stuff. In terms of an application, how it looks to you, I don't know. But for me, I love the feeling of just these multiple layers of ink on a cardstock. Like that. Just layers and kind of building up the intensity and kind of the color depth, I guess you could say. It's just a lot of fun to do. It gets kind of deeper looking because dye-based inks are transparent, so the colors that are underneath will influence what you see on the surface. Okay, so that's black over there, you see, but look at that, how rich that value of it is, you know, that swatch of it. Okay, maybe a little bit more down here and here. Let's see if I can get it darker. I don't know. Because every time I do a swipe, I'm swiping the color off, but this little dabbing motion is kind of helping to build up some color. Or some ink on there. All right. Oh, pretty cool. In terms of that background, I like the intensity of it. I've been doing so much experimentation lately. I just wanted to. It's like my bread and butter. It's going back to dye-based inks on glossy, and the reason why I use that medium, that combination a lot, is for this type of reason. I like getting really deeply saturated layers of colors like that. I covered up a lot of the pink that was back there, but see how that pink kind of comes through like that? And that glowing area in there is a result of having that pink as a foundation, so it's still reading. It just doesn't read as pink in the areas where it's been covered up so much. Alright, so I might come back and finish off some of these perimeters a little bit, but then we'll figure out something to stamp in the foreground to stand out in front of this kind of nighttime type of dramatic sky. I think it'd be like something like that. So that being said, I think I'll take it I need to make it a little bit darker up there, and what's going to be the top, okay? Maybe like right in here. I don't want to obscure this, but I'll figure it out and see where it goes from there. Okay, so I don't know, might be a couple hours of drying time here. I don't know. It probably takes less, like half an hour or something like that, but I don't know. We'll see how it is. It's a little bit tacky to the touch right now. Okay, first part A here. Okay, back. Oh, I don't know. It's probably been about 8 hours or so. I got doing some other things, but this should be well dried here and set up. So I think I'm going to add in some more layers. I'll go back to the dark brown here, and I'll get into the black again, but I just kind of want to reinvigorate the paper a little bit. It won't be so saturated though, just going on straight in with this Marvy ink. The Marvy inks are a little bit thinner again, so they tend to penetrate the paper a little bit faster than other brands. I think it's because Marvy inks were an existing pen ink, so they just came up with a very dense foam pad, as opposed to some color, a company that came up with inks for the sake of an ink pad. So they had existing ink pads with the type of material used in ink pads, and they had to come up with an ink that was thick enough so it wouldn't run out of a raised dye-based pad. Okay, going back in with the magenta. Never really hurts to kind of reinvigorate and add more layers of something. I wouldn't say that it can always make for a richer surface, but sometimes it can by adding just more ink of a given hue to the surface. In this case, I don't know, it looked a little dull to me. Spray fixing it would probably remedy that, but I don't know. Like I said, it doesn't hurt to add a little bit more. Okay. Alright, maybe I do need to go on just straight with the black, because this is really built up. I guess it's the surface. It probably, adding that additional Marvy ink just now probably brought some of the other inks back into solution, mainly the Peach Bellini, which has a thicker kind of consistency than the Marvy. Any kind of ink from Ranger, for the most part, is a little bit thicker, which makes it a perfect ink for the initial layers. Okay, kind of looking a little bit more and more, I don't know, maybe interesting. A little bit of texture up there. I kind of had the stylus tool at an angle like that and applied. If I drag it through there again, I'd probably lose that texture a little bit. So if I want it, I can keep it. If I don't want it, I can just wipe right through it. It's kind of interesting trying to kind of manipulate such a wet surface. Wet, saturated with ink surface. Alright, bringing that in. See, that surface is looking a little bit more kind of aggressive, you know, seeing these types of marks on there, kind of like that. I can always smooth them out if I want, or smooth them out a little bit. One of the beauties of this type of free-form application of ink is that you're going to really come up with something quite unique. There'll never be another background like it, even if you do it again with the exact same inks. It'll come out quite different. Again, just based on the amount of variation that can occur with such a, I don't know, such a technique. Alright, that's kind of more along the lines of what I want here. I do want it to be a night sky. I think I'm going to leave it in here a little bit lighter. I'll put some foreground on here, and just by retaining some of the by retaining some of that white, it'll give me a few options as far as some additional textural layers by way of something like a paint pen, gel pen. I don't know, but I might add a little bit of tone and knock down some of the value in here. But again, now I am really, really wet again in terms of the surface. Look at that area in there is really kind of nice. It really has some deep saturations, and I think it has some depth in terms of color and temperature, intensity, maybe. Alright, so there's my next step. My next thing, like I said, I think I might bring in some more red into here. I was going to wait for it to dry, but I think I can come in. I think I could find a way in there without wiping off too much of that ink over there. My fingertips are kind of getting a little bit inky. Okay. It's kind of interesting. Look at that. Kind of that cherry red glow going there. It's really intense. Yeah, that is cherry red. It's kind of nice. God, that is really intense. What's going through my head is I'm wondering if I should add it somewhere else. I'm thinking down here. If I put it over everything, it's doesn't really stand out because it's too similar to everything else on the page. But let's do this. Let's add some more down here. It's really quite a nice glow. See, that's one of the things I really enjoy about dye-based sorry. See if I get this focused in. Dye-based transparent inks is the amount of depth that can be achieved, like that color right there, or here. You're not going to get that just straight out of the pad. It has to be kind of a build-up of different hue tones to achieve that. And that's where, you know, the glossy paper comes in handy for that. Not that we have to do this technique all the time, you know. Stampscapes is not a technique or just scenic stamping in general. It's not so much about a technique as it is about, you know, just a collection of imagery, components, where you can build scenes. And depending on what type of surface you're using, it allows you to finish off your scenes in whatever manner you wish. This is one of my favorites in terms of the media, and this is kind of why. Look at that intensity there now. From that red, it's kind of crazy. Okay, so that is really, really juicy. So we'll have to wait for that to set up and dry a little bit, and I think we'll be ready for our foreground imagery. We'll see what we're going to do. I don't know, this area right here is a little bit light. Magenta, maybe? Or some other hue. Could go warmer in here. I don't know. Just kind of want to make the most intense background. Intense in terms of relative brightness of a color. Not lightness, but brightness. Okay. I don't know. We'll see. Or maybe what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of contrasting color in here, just a little spot color. Maybe a super light blue would be good. Just in here, just to make these areas stand out a little bit more, just by having kind of a complementary, well, it's not really complementary, kind of an analogous hue, I guess. A little bit of blue here, maybe. Okay, get a little glare here. You can easily see my hand in the scene. It's become so shiny and black in the background. So, yeah, this one will look really good when I spray it off. It should look like a freshly stamped or colored background, you know, when it's still wet. So intense with colored layering. Okay, back for some more layering of color tone. This is black. I want to make it darker, I think. What tends to happen, I think, which is the case with this one here, is I've been going kind of minimal with some just some media explorations in my last, I don't know, a few videos, and I didn't really lay down too much color, so in this one I'm probably trying to compensate for that, just getting back to some really super deep, rich tones here, in terms of just huge amount of saturation. think that's what tends to happen. I'll do something like this, then the next scene will probably be rather minimal, or just I don't know, maybe a lot less layering or whatnot. Or it'll just have a lighter kind of feel to it. This one's, you know, in terms of what probably would be a kind of the emotional content of the scene. It's, you know, it's rather heavy because of I don't know, just the amount of drama. You know, a background like this would kind of I don't know, visually represent maybe. Okay, now up here, it looks a little bit anemic, I think. It could use a little bit of something. Maybe let's try some of this pale violet again. Looking at some other choices as well, but let's try the pale violet. Just something purple, okay? Okay, it looks alright, I guess. I'm kind of starting to wonder what I'm going to put on this scene. Or, not scene, but background. Not really sure. Yeah, I mean, on something like this, I have a rough idea of kind of the concept I'm going after, but when I start, but you know, it's just a very loose idea in terms of maybe the finish on it, because I know, you know, when I'm doing this type of thing, things can come up, and I just, you know, change course. On this one, I wasn't expecting to, I wasn't expecting to lay down quite as much ink as I am here, but I don't know, that's the direction that I seem to want to go in once I saw something, I guess. Alright, that is really dark on the edge. Alright, that looks pretty crazy, just in terms of from a saturation standpoint. Alright, now, one of the stamps that I had in mind for this, I have no idea what's up and down with this. It could be interesting. Maybe not so much. I don't think so. I don't know. That to me, it just feels right side up. If there was going to be an upside, you know, right side up, upside down. Something like that over the top. I mean, there can't be too much going on in here. It has to be fairly solid as far as the silhouette goes. With something like that. Some splatter paint might look kind of interesting in this. But if I do that, I don't know if I can get a really clean impression of that. Let's just do that. Let's just go with this one. All right. Let's see what this is going to look like. Boy, this piece of cardstock it's absolutely saturated with ink. You can just tell just from the way it's kind of wavy on it. This probably might look a little bit, I don't know if you can tell from the glare on this, you can tell it's just kind of bowed a little bit. Very heavily saturated with tone. Alright, I'm thinking about a couple impressions of this. This is the Spooky Branch stamp. Okay, on this one, I'm going to allow this ink to transfer. So it doesn't mean to get that ink to transfer when you're making an impression. Now, if I'm just stamping this out on a dry piece of paper, you know, it's just your traditional stamping. You're going to press it down, stamp it, pull it up, right? But what I'm doing is I'm stamping this image, and imagine the surface is kind of wet, so if this is wet and this is a little bit damp, I mean, this isn't like soaking to the touch or anything like that, but it is damp. So you have to kind of allow the ink to kind of sit there and penetrate the all those inks a little bit more, you know, when you're talking about just a huge amount of ink on that, you know, saturation. Okay, so I want it nice and black. It would be a shame to kind of do all that background work, stamp this out, pull it off too soon, and then it's just, you know, it's more of like a, instead of that 100% black like that, it's more of like a 75 or 80%, you know, gray, where you have all that color kind of showing through it, okay? Let the ink transfer over, and you'll get a nice stark black impression. Now there are times, yeah, when you want it to be a little bit lighter, maybe to represent something farther back in the distance, so it stamps out kind of in a grayscale tone. But in this case, with those heavy saturations of ink, I think it's better if it's, you know, quite dark. Okay, and I'll go for another impression of it like so. Okay. And I'll do the same thing, just light even pressure. One of the things I was getting at with the impression here too is it's not so much pressing it harder to get the ink to transfer, because that would be like squeezing the ink down. You just want it to, you know, nice firm pressure, but even, and just allow the ink to soak in a little bit and transfer to the surface. I'm sure it's penetrating the surface a little bit in terms of the moisture, but for the most part, yeah, it's probably a little bit more surface oriented in terms of the layering of ink. Okay? Alright, so fairly dramatic, I think. I don't know what it represents. It's probably not so much an aurora borealis. Is it a fire in the background? It's not really too much yellow and orange. Does it really matter what it is? Maybe not. But I think it looks pretty cool. Hey, look, you can see my fingerprint that I just laid down there when I touched it. Can't even tell if there's ink on there. Okay, I'm going to be careful not to swipe across those branches, because, you know, they're very wet. Okay, there we go. That I even added in a little bit more texture up there as well, so. Alright. I guess we'll see what happens after this. I can't believe how many steps I'm, taking on this in terms of allowing something to set up and dry, but I don't know. This is one of the most layered backgrounds I've done in a while. I mean, I don't know. I've done a lot of layering before and a lot of ink, but I don't know. This is probably 3 or 4x more steps in this one. So I think, I don't know, I can put some highlights on that branch, but it looks pretty dramatic just flat like that as well. Oh, but maybe I can do some bleed-proof white with a little fine brush and put some really thin, very subtle highlights on this with some variation. Maybe something like that would be interesting. I'm trying to think if I want to do anything up here. I don't think I want stars or something like that, or I can splatter paint it, kind of going from this white area up that way to kind of create a little bit more movement, I guess. Maybe coming from here. Might look kind of interesting, but I think I'm going to let it soak in a little bit and then I'll figure it out. Alright, so kind of a cool little, I don't know, one stamp composition so far. And let's see where it goes from here. I don't know, break number, 50 for this one or something like that, This thing is just too wet to, work over right now. And it's really super wet on the outside. Even just laying down some ink, what is it? I don't know, like 7 minutes after I laid it down last time, it's still, when I put down some more, it really spread out really easy, meaning that it's still fairly damp around that edge there. See that nice little flame back in there? That's what you want. That's the beauty of glossy paper in terms of this technique, Glossy paper isn't good for a lot of things like colored pencils or something like that, or chalks, but it is good for a certain look. Okay, so anyways, let's get this drying and we'll take it from there. Alright. This crazy scene just keeps getting crazier in terms of the saturations. Crazy in the kind of the best sense of the word. I think I've decided what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to add some of the bleed-proof white with a paintbrush. Okay, I'm making this a little bit darker out there as it kind of, I don't know, this light kind of stretches off into space, I guess. And just wanting to really get it super rich in terms of the value of that darkness. And I'm making it dark out there because I want this to be that much lighter by contrast. Okay, so bring that in a little bit more. I don't know, I mean, now that the tree limbs are in place, I can kind of blend them in a little bit more if I want them to look like they're kind of coming out of the darkness. I mean, I don't have to do that, but might be kind of interesting, kind of like there's a growth coming out of that, or I don't know, maybe not a growth of the darkness, but kind kind of an integral part of the, I guess, the value scheme, you know, in terms of light and dark. But anyways, enough of that. I don't know how much, you know, more saturated I can make it. Maybe something around here, maybe, perhaps. I don't know, that red looks awfully good over there. I'm kind of tempted to bring something else in here. But I don't have to decide that right now, because I don't think I'm going to put anything else out there. So anyways, this is Martin's Bleed Proof White. It's a very opaque white watercolor paint, okay? And you can get this online. If you just look up Dr. Martin's Bleed Proof White, you'll probably come up with half a dozen resellers. I don't know if you'd find this in a craft store. You might, I'm not sure. But mostly art stores sell it, and maybe not all art stores. It'd be kind of a fairly well supplied one, though. Should have it. Okay, let's start off by applying some of this to some of these limbs. It's going to be very subtle. I'm putting white on top of pale yellow in it. You know, it's not going to show up very much, so. Interesting. Actually, that doesn't look too bad in terms of that coming from above. I was thinking about having it grow up, but I think I might like this configuration even better, having the limb coming down. Anyways, I'm putting a little bit of a highlight on a branch, and I see this branch as being underlit, okay? You know, most of the lightest area is kind of down there, so it's kind of like a hairline highlight that's going on some of these branches, just to make it a little bit more dimensional. I don't think I'll put it on all of them, because I think that would be a little bit overkill. Alright, so can you see where I'm doing that on some of these? There. And of course, where the lightest area, that will kind of determine where I put some of these highlights as far as what side of the branch I'll put it on. So on this one right here, it's being lit from that side, so put it over there. So by putting this little highlight on there, we're saying visually that that branch is not just a two-dimensional object, okay? We're saying it represents 3 dimensions, so we're saying that it can be lit on, you know, on a portion of it, kind of the portion that's facing the light source. And if a object is kind of in the darkness, chances are there's not too much light that's hitting that area. So, like say this branch back in here, maybe I won't illuminate it, you know, at all. So that's kind of making it stand out a little bit more. If you put it on a couple branches, it looks kind of strange, because we're thinking, what is that? So you have to kind of follow up with little highlights on various branches, in this case, and you have to keep it kind of consistent, okay? Meaning, you know, if that branch over here is catching some of that light, then it stands to reason that the branch right next to it would have a little bit of highlight as well. But again, you don't want to, you know, you don't want to do too much like there's just some kind of a, I don't know, LED lighting built into the branch or something like that. So, you know, the way you do that is you just put a little bit more highlights in the lighter areas, you know, where it would be lit. Okay. Now, you can do this with a gel pen, but I'm able to achieve a much more kind of narrow highlight, very thin, using a paintbrush, okay? You can control the variation of it, of the size of the stroke and whatnot. So then I can go really thin right there. You notice how with this paintbrush I'm usually pulling backwards like this. I'm dragging it because you know, for me I can get more control over it that way. And I just turn the branch or the card in the direction that's conducive to that pull, to that stroke. So how's that? Does that look like it's being illuminated? Oh, I need, looks like I need one down here. Something very, very thin, right? Just down there. Okay, let's see. Oh, let's see if I can put a couple little real thin ones on here. Okay, let's take a look. It looks quite different than it did before, in my opinion. But I think I'm sold on this. I think that's the composition right there for me. I think it's coming from above like that. I think it's more dramatic. Or something, I don't know. It's more something. It seems fitting for the composition. Kind of like a hand or something like that. And also, I don't know, it seems like gravity is kind of pulling down there, so I think I'll do that. This is a really quite a simple composition, of course. You know, we're talking about 2 impressions, but I mean, I've been doing a lot of the same type of thing on here in terms of the just the application of ink, kind of in the same way, just using more of certain colors and whatnot. But and this is just kind of just simple highlighting on a few branches, right? But for me, it's not a boring process or anything like that. This is really fun. It's just, it's kind of bringing, for me, it's it's kind of bringing something to life, or trying to. And I guess the changes kind of are subtle, but I think they're very effective. Just in terms of the illumination of a branch, which ones to illuminate and whatnot. Now, you can let this kind of dry, and if you've applied too much of that white paint, you can just take it and kind of buff it off a little bit. It's kind of a chalky type of paint material, whatever, media. But it should come off the surface just fine. It's not. It doesn't adhere to it. The surface. Alright, I was looking at this when I was holding this up. I look at my camera screen sometimes, and sometimes that reveals some things to me. It's like looking at your piece, like on a TV set or something like that. I'm just going to see if I can pull this branch out from the background a little bit, just by putting in a little bit of a highlight like that. See, then I kind of put that line over the top of that one, kind of pulling this branch in front of this one a little bit. So it gives it a little bit of dimension. I think I put a little bit too much there. I can kind of scratch it off. Alright, so I can use a little bird or something like that, or bats, huh? If I had bats. But anyways, there's my scene. I think I'll mat it and put it in a card format. I'll spray it with an acrylic spray like a Krylon. This area should get nice and saturated, although it doesn't look too bad right now. It looks fairly saturated in terms of the ink intensity, and I don't know. You can't get more simple than that in terms of composition. Is it scenic stamping? I don't know. It's kind of a design element within it. You have the background, which is sky, and you have foreground, which is, these branches right here. But anyways, it was kind of a good exercise for me to kind of, after a couple weeks, kind of get back into the layered dye-based ink on glossy paper technique, and I don't know, searching and trying to achieve a kind of a nice color glow and intense, I don't know, background statement, you might say. So anyways, that was really fun, and I don't know, in my experiments with the bleed-proof white, one of the things I determined was I think this is going to be kind of a formidable, I don't know, tool in terms of creating a little bit of variation. You can get a really varied line. Now, I am no painter. I'm not really very good with soft media like painting or something like that, subtleties, but this little paintbrush right here is just a cheap paintbrush. I don't know where I got it from years ago, but anyways, that plus that bleed-proof white can really make some nice subtle and effective highlights for you. I think that looked great in water though too, instead of doing like a ballpoint, which is going to be faster, but I mean, using this and putting a few little streaks in here, that did not take a long time. So something like that, and the varied line could look really great in terms of can you imagine that on like a water surface or something like that, that glistening watery surface, or something like that would be really great, or blades of grass or something like that in the highlights, the foreground. You can put a little highlight like that and something. It would look like, I don't know, like shining dew or something like that, or just where light is hitting, grasses or whatnot. So anyways, hope you enjoyed that scene. I certainly took a lot of steps to do that, but it was really quite a lot of fun. And I don't know, this for me, I like doing stamps and having a background, midground, foreground type of thing going, but I don't know, this for me is kind of a fun way to use the stamps as well. Just utilizing your foreground imagery like that, against some sort of varied background. Those varied backgrounds are a lot of fun to see what you come up with. If I ever tried to do that again, I probably wouldn't it wouldn't be exactly the same, just because of the varied amounts of ink you might use of one color to the next. And I don't know, I think that's a good thing. I wouldn't want to do 20 of the same one anyway, but or much less, I don't know when I really want to do 2 the same way, or 3. I want, so so as far as that goes, that technique, it's good with me. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, bearing with me on the multiple layers and layers and layers of ink, and hope you enjoy the look of this scene as much as I enjoyed doing it.